All right, welcome back. This is Mr. Burdett once again. I'm going to talk about. I told you I was going to give you another example because all you need all the examples you can get because we need to become very proficient at working with integers. Okay. In the last video we talked about a similar situation that we're looking at now. Talking about transactions on one's bank account, and what they look like in the real world. We talked about the fact that in the real world, when the transaction is performed or a debit is performed on your account, there's a minus to indicate that it's something that's being taken out of your account instead of it being added into your account. And when we look down here at the Board of Ed deposit, we can see that it says a plus 200 instead of a minus 3, okay, or a minus 25. So this is being added to the account instead of taken out or debited from this account. So we're going to assume once again that this is a partial statement, and this is down here indicates the current balance, and this pink is indicating the current balance of what I have left in my account after a deposit of $200 was inputted and all these transactions transpired or happened on this account. Okay, with that said, one more mention. So I hope we have it clear that just because one see a minus sign in front of a number doesn't mean that that number is negative. Now, it could very well be negative, but it doesn't necessarily mean that number is negative. For instance, just looking at this number in this particular state, we can't tell whether this is a minus sign or whether it's a negative sign because of the state in which it's in. We don't have a scenario to go with it at all. So we don't know if this is an action of subtracting 3 or if this is a current state of negative 3. Okay, so how would we know if we had a situation to go with it, for one, or if we had let's say and this is not dealing with what's over here yet. We're talking about whether a number is negative or not. Okay, if we had a larger number being subtracted from a smaller number, we can tell right away that this will end up in the negative. So this minus 3 is really not a minus 3. This is actually a negative 3 because we actually took away 5 from 2, and then we had to go 3 below that to end up, to take away 5. So we ended up in the negative. So we took away as many positives as we can, 2 of them, but we had to keep going and going and going into the negative. So this is clearly a negative 3 in this case, in other words, and not a positive 3. So in this case, the negative 3, or the fact that it's a negative, is clear. Okay, so we can tell whether numbers are negative by if we're looking at a picture of a number line, if we have scenarios to go along with our problem, and if we're taking away a larger number from a smaller number, then we can tell whether or not we're going to end up in the negative or not. Now, looking at this particular account right here, in particular, let's do the same thing we did with the last one to get more practice. Now, like I said, I only have $10 left. We see in the pink, I have a current balance of $10 left after all these transactions. Now, if once again, what I'm trying to teach you all is what happens when you subtract the negative and how multiplication actually comes up. Okay, now let's say this minus 25 transaction, this debit of $25, and this debit of $25, and this Office Depot debit of $25. Let's say I didn't do them. Let's say I didn't actually perform those transactions, and I call my bank and say take them off. So, like I said before, or like we've been mentioning before, over and over and over again, if they're going to take it off, they're going to subtract that minus transaction off. Now, that's not even subtracting a negative because, like I said before, this is just telling us they're taking out $25. So this isn't even expressing subtracting a negative. So I'm not going to even say subtracting a negative 25, because that's not even a negative. That's just subtracting something that's been subtracted off my account. Okay, so that's one of them. So let me take it off. Okay. Where's that lagoon? Oh boy. Okay. Sorry. Let's take it off. Bam. I didn't do it. So we took it off. Now, let's actually go ahead and this thing is driving me crazy. Okay, we took one of them off. Sorry for that. Now, let's say I didn't go to American Mattress. Let's take this one off as well. So we're going to subtract this minus $25 transaction off as well. Let's say, now let's subtract it. I didn't do that. Okay, so it's coming off. Now, every time they take off something that I didn't do, what should they be doing? That's right. They should be giving it back to me because I didn't do it. If I didn't do it, it shouldn't be on my account balance. It shouldn't be there in the first place. And notice I'm taking it all the way off. And that's how things work when you have debit cards. You know, you don't get refunded back the money like in your hand. They actually just take off the transactions that you didn't do. So let's say I didn't do this last transaction, like I said, at Office Depot. So we're going to subtract that minus $25 transaction. I didn't do any of those. And I'm arguing to the teller, hey, I didn't do any of these. So I need you to subtract all three of those off my account because I did not do those. Okay, so with that said, in each case, we see that, let me take off the third one. There was $25 and $25 that I was charged that I didn't do. So evidently, I must be in a situation now where I'm going to get back this $25. I'm going to get back this $25 that shouldn't have transpired anyway and get back this $25. So that's why subtracting a minus gives us a positive back, give us that amount right back. Subtracting this minus amount gives us that amount right back. We subtract this amount that was minused, so we get it right back because it shouldn't have been minused off my account in the first place. Okay, it shouldn't have been debited at all. So what I want you all to understand is that this is where we get the repeated subtraction of minuses, is when we get a chance to see why in the world people are always saying a negative times a negative is a positive. And it doesn't really have to mean negative times a negative equals positive. This actually creates this situation right here. We subtracted off my account, how many of them? 3 of, not 325s, 3 of those minus $25 transactions off my account. We subtracted 3 of these off my account, and as a result, I got back $75. So instead of my current balance being $10, it actually should be $85. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, it should make sense. You see how we have a minus times a minus and why that equals a positive? And notice Mr. Burdett is not saying a negative times a negative. I'm saying minus times a minus in this situation. Now, it could be a minus times a negative, but this is this situation here, and this is what I'm trying to model. Okay, so the repeated subtraction, instead of showing repeated subtraction over and over and over again of minuses, we just succinctly wrote it as subtracting 3 of these minus 25s. So this turned into multiplication. Repeated subtraction can be modeled using multiplication. Okay, so if we have a problem, that's that situation. Okay, So actually, let me just take it all the way out so we have more room real quick. Okay. So what we have to really understand that the key to understanding the multiplication of integers is just basically knowing the roles of the multiplier and the multiplicand. We have to know the role of the multiplier and the multiplicand. It's the multiplier. I keep saying this over and over again. We need to know what a multiplier actually dictates or tells us to do. The multiplicand. Knowing the roles of each one of these can help us better understand integers, because it can help us learn how to stretch them out the way they're supposed to and look at them in the light that they're supposed to be looked at, so that we can truly understand what we're looking at. All right. But anyway, let's say we had we added 8, we added 8, we added 8 again. So let's do another one. We added 8. So in other words, a shorter way of showing us adding 8 4 times is we're going to say we added 4 of these positive 8s. We could put a plus sign there if we want to show positive. But this is 4 of these. So this is telling us, hey, if we have repeated addition of this, we can, what tells us to repeatedly add? The multiplier tells us to repeatedly add when it's a positive. When it's a positive. This is telling us to repeatedly add the multiplicand. The 4 is telling us to repeatedly add this 8. Now if we had minus 8, minus 8, minus 8, minus 8. What are we repeatedly doing? We are repeatedly subtracting positive 8s, right? So if we're repeatedly subtracting, that's what the multiplier tells us to do. Hey, repeatedly subtract. We're going to subtract 4 of these 8s. So if we subtracted 8 4 times, we're going to be minus 32. And so this will be minus 32. We subtracted 4 of these. Okay? Now those 8s are positive, and we had a whole video about why they're positive. So I'm not going to elaborate on that right now. So with that said, that's that situation. Okay? What about, let's work it the other way. 4 of these. Now, is this telling us to repeatedly add or subtract? What is the multiplier saying? Repeatedly add or repeatedly subtract? What is this 4 telling us to do? Repeatedly add. So we're going to repeatedly add minus 3s. So we're going to add a minus 3. We're going to add another minus 3. We're going to add another minus 3. How many of them we need to add? 4 of them. Add another minus 3. So if we added minus 3 plus another minus 3 plus another minus 3 plus another minus 3, we're going to have minus what? 12. Exactly. So 4 times minus 3, or 4 of these minus 3s back to back being added together, gives us a minus 12. And why am I adding them? Because this multiplier is not saying subtract, because they don't have a subtraction sign in front of it. Okay? So we're so used to saying a negative, and when we see this, we're so used to saying a negative times a positive. We are really not understanding what a multiplier actually either asks us to do. It either asks us to repeatedly add or repeatedly subtract this term over here, or the multiplicand. All right, one more. I'm running out of room. This is running a little bit long. Real quick, we're going to subtract. We're going to say I'm going to subtract a minus 5. We're going to subtract another minus 5. and we're going to subtract another minus 5. So we are repeatedly subtracting minus 5. So if we are repeatedly subtracting, then our multiplier should say subtract. How many times did we subtract? 3 times. We subtracted what 3 times? We subtracted 3 of these right here. And we know if we subtract a minus 5, that would be like adding 5. We subtract another minus 5, that's like adding 5 back to you. When you subtract the minus 5, it gets back to you. So this is why a minus times a minus is a positive 15. Okay, because of the stretched out way it form, we can see it looks at. We just looking at it. Hey, so understanding the rows. This is teaching us not only addition of integers and the subtraction of integers. This is helping us see the multiplication of integers and what they come out to be without even exercising any rules. We're actually working these the way they should be modeled out. Okay, with that said, talk to you later. Bye bye.